Hey, y'all. Okay, I'm going to stand here for the most of the time because this stage is weird to be on top of there like that. I've been sitting over in the corner, and I'm really, really honored to be here and to do this for you guys. And I feel a weight, right, a responsibility to make sure that you guys understand what culturally responsive teaching is, because I want you guys to be able to go back and do this, but also take it a step further. We'll go in a little bit into what critical education means, as well as student activism. But before we do that, I want to bless the space. So a long-time friend of mine is here. He is the youth reverend at Ebenezer Baptist, which is Dr. King's church here. And I asked him to come and bless us before we begin. Plus, some of y'all probably ain't say y'all blessing for y'all aid. I see you.
Let us pray. All wise and knowing God, we thank you for allowing us to be in this place and in this space right now. We ask that you open our hearts, minds, and spirits so we can listen for what you have for us to gain in this moment. We also ask that you bless the food that we have already received for the nourishment of our bodies, so that it can continue to give us the strength to do this work. This is our prayer. In Christ's name, amen.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm trying to navigate this. I'm going to have to go back and forth between here and the computer. I'm just trying to navigate both, and I'm actually not the most tech-savvy person. For those who know me, you know it takes me like forever to send an email alone. So I want to start off telling you a little about myself, but during this time, I want you to be thinking about who you are, where you're from, what you value, the things that you did as a child, the special accomplishments that you've had in your own life, because I want to make sure that we're thinking about who we are and not just what we stand for, which are actually two separate things. And then I want you to be thinking about who you are at your core. Are you bringing that into your classroom? Okay. So I'm Stevie. That's me at the top with the mini fro. My friend tried to play me the other day. She said I had more hair then than I do now. I was like, don't do me. But I was born in Cleveland, Ohio, but I grew up in Birmingham. Yeah, woo woo. But I grew up in Birmingham, Alabama, and then I graduated. Oh, roll tide. Roll tide. But I went back to high school in Cleveland, actually, so I split time between my parents for the most part. I am the daughter of a Panther. My mom's a Black Panther. My dad used to be Nation of Islam, and now he's just kind of like subscribing to everything. I was like, no more assalamu alaikum. He's like, God bless. It's interesting. And now I coach teachers in New Orleans around culturally responsive teaching. I have 23 teachers. Some of my teachers are here. Braden's here. I know. Yay. And I love my job. I love absolutely making sure that what's relevant in children's lives is coming through in content and curriculum. But when I think about who I am at my core, I've always been a researcher, a learner, a reader, a writer. And for whatever you are, you want to bring that to your classroom. Some of you guys are musicians and singers, and you speak two different languages. Maybe your original language isn't even English. I meet people like that all the time. And I'm like, you speak Spanish, man? Yeah, I'm Colombian. That's cool. Your kids didn't know you speak Spanish. That's interesting. Bring who you are to your classroom so that you can then allow your children to bring who they are. And here I have at the bottom, which is really important, to always pay respect to James Hood and Vivian, because they integrated the University of Alabama. And because of them, I end up being the third African-American woman to be accepted into Teach for America from the University of Alabama. And so I stand on their shoulders. So always honor and respect to them. So I want to start us off. Education can either be liberating or assimilating, because education can simultaneously be empowering and disempowering. So what I want us to do, you're at your tables. I tried to think about this. I was trying to imagine what this would look like when Huette was like, you're going to be outside at lunch. And I was like, with black folk? With music? How is this going to work? But what I want you guys to be doing at your tables, everyone should have copies, yes? Does everyone have copies? Okay. So there's a poem on the front. There's a poem on the front. And that poem represents a conversation between W.E.B. and Booker T. Does everyone know who those people are? Everybody, people who don't are like, I ain't gonna say nothing. Ask your neighbor. Okay, but what I want you guys to be doing is to read the poem. I'm gonna give us about 2 minutes to read it, and then I want you guys to discuss at your table which philosophy that you align with. Which philosophy do you align with? Which philosophy did you have growing up? So here. And do you feel like this philosophy prepared you for your journey in life? Does that make sense? So the way that I'm going to bring us back, I always used to do in my classroom, I go, I may. Does anybody know what that means? Who wants to tell me?
It means like I go is like excuse me, or like I'm present, and I may means like I hear you, I acknowledge your presence.
Excellent. Thank you. What's your name? Andre. Thank you, Andre. So I'm going to say I go, and you will say I go. I go. So this is how I'll pull us back together. I'm going to set the timer. You guys are going to read it, and then you guys are going to discuss it. I'm going to give us 2 minutes. I'm kind of speeding it up because we're a little bit behind time. Okay. All right. I go. I go. So I want to hear, normally I do this like a long time, but again, time-wise. So one person who really, really feels like they connect with W.E.B., I want you to come up and share what your thoughts are about your own education and why you feel like you connect so much. And then I'll choose one person who connects very deeply with Booker T. And I would love them to share. So anybody? W.E.B.? This cough. Come on up. The price is right, ma'am.
Hi, I agree with being voluntold. Today I was the one voluntold. I usually volunteer, but it's okay. I'm Natasha Dupuy, everyone. I'm a 2012 St. Louis Corps member. Silent Arch. Okay. So I picked the W.E.B. Du Bois philosophy as what's guiding kind of like my educational journey thus far and what I was brought up understanding. I based it in standpoint. I need to be able to understand how I am being internalized by others, right? Understand how I internalize myself so that I can navigate and leverage my own identity and also be able to work with people from differences. So I think that that's why that guiding philosophy of knowledge and constantly looking at perspective is what gravitates me towards W.E.B. Du Bois. I did also comment in saying that that alone is not what I understand, right? I also been humbled to know, like, you need society to work. You need to play a part, right? And if sometimes your position is where it is and is there a totem pole, that must exist, but you should also be navigating on the back end, even if it's interpersonal, like that standpoint, that perspective. How do you leverage that and navigate your identity?
Thank you. Someone who identifies with Booker T. Come through, La Mama.
Hi, everyone. My name's Camille Jones, 2012 Metro Atlanta Corps. What's up, people? Hey, town. So thinking back on my life, I wouldn't have thought I would identify with Booker T philosophy, and even reading through the poem, I was like, oh, okay, some people need to have tangible, hard skills, But since working in a high school and since Georgia has gotten rid of tech prep diplomas, I don't think high school is a place to get rid of tracking. When I'm getting sophomores, juniors, seniors who still don't understand how to divide fractions, still can't write complete sentences, and that's not me saying I'm going to give up on them or they don't deserve this extensive, additional education, but I'm not being pragmatic, and the school systems are not being pragmatic about what's in front of us, and we're trying to make sure our students can survive. Right now, the average age of a welder is 55 years old. You can make $22 an hour being a welder. Like, why aren't there, skills for our students to be able to do this in the school, so I know when they leave my high school, they can have a job and they can survive and make money and thrive and be the business owner they want to be. So that's why I'm Booker T.
Thank you. All right, so here's the deal. Just for the sake of today, not about that life. So just for the sake of today, what I want you guys to do is to think about both philosophies like two sides of a coin, right? Can you get rid of the other side of the coin? Nope. So what I mean is that my parents and my grandmother and all of those who come before me, they pushed really, really hard for me to go to school. That was really important to them, right? But I promise you, at least once a month, I get on the phone with my grandmother. My grandmother's like 84 now. And I get on the phone with her, and she's like, you don't know how to do nothing. You can't cook, you can't sew nothing, you just don't know how to do nothing. And I'm like, I do know, I'm a thinker, I'm a reader, I'm a writer, I coach teachers, I worked hard. She's like, that don't that, if the world end today, you're just gonna die. What is that? What is that? So I want you guys to think about having to navigate both worlds, because I believe we do live in a world where we have to navigate both worlds. And it reminds me of that conversation that was had at CBC, which was, whatever, I won't share my thoughts. But there was a panel at the Congressional Black Caucus in which basically different mayors came together and they were basically talking about what needed to happen, right? And basically what you hear coming from this panel is that black folk got to create their own. You got to go out and start your own business and all of those things. And I believe that to a certain extent, that's actually true. How you going to create something if you don't know how to create nothing? Right? So like all the business owners I know, they know how to cook. They know how to sew. They put furniture together. I don't know how to do none of that. So my goal over the summer is to pick up a little trade so I can balance myself out, because if the world ends, I just got to know what I need to do. All right. So these are the things you're going to get from me today. You're basically going to understand the why and some of the how of culturally responsive teaching. You guys will have breakout sessions later, so I'm not going to go deep into culturally responsive teaching from the how standpoint, if that makes sense. I want to just leave us with the why. It's not showing? Oh, thanks, boo. Jamie came through. You're going to have a coherent conceptual map of culturally responsive teaching and critical pedagogy. You guys have a map inside of your packet. Please make sure that it's there. It's blue. Is it there? Shout out to Ahmed. He held me down. I was like, can you make these copies in the final hour? He was like, yeah. All right. You guys are going to understand the mindsets and dispositions that you have to have as a culturally responsive teacher. So everyone, when they hear this, they're like, where are the strategies? Where are the strategies? I'm trying to implement this tomorrow. Some of us are ready for implementation tomorrow. Some of us got to get our mind right? Feeling motivated to keep talking and learning the ways this can influence your practice. So these are all the things I want us to walk out with. I think I have time to play this video. So basically, I tried to think about what's a way where you guys can understand why this type of teaching is important. And so there's like a 9-minute video, and I broke it up into segments. So you'll see like part 1, part 2, part 3. It uses some lingo that I don't necessarily agree with. It talks about like the achievement gap, which I think is more opportunity-based. I haven't given it a word in my mind. But it used some lingo that I'm not quite there, all the way there with, but the message is still the same. So I want you guys to kind of like look at it and start to take it in, and I'm going to take this part by part. Does that make sense? Got it.
E3, one cannot have educational excellence without equity. Part 1 of 3. What is educational excellence? The challenge the U.S. faces today is that the vast majority of our students are not excellently prepared for the workforce. From educators like Linda Darling-Hammond to Geneva Gay, from authors like Tony Wagner to Thomas Friedman, and from corporations like Oracle to HP, they all agree. We need to redefine educational excellence. Another way to say this is, what does it really mean to be smart? Traditionally, being smart means how much you know. To use a sports analogy of American football, the end zone would be equivalent to high school graduation. Students are working their way down the field trying to learn as much content as possible. When they've learned enough, they graduate, and we call this being smart. There are two problems with this traditional way of winning. First, in this country, we have an educational achievement gap to start with. Based on race, class, gender, immigration status, etc., students are starting on different parts of the playing field. For example, low-income students do not have access to a private SAT tutor, or immigrant students must first learn to master the English language before they learn the content. But even if the U.S. could close the gap, we don't have the population compared to China or India to compete in this game. As many of you heard, they have more honor students than we have students, so we're never going to win. The second problem is that being smart is no longer just content knowledge, or in other words, just knowing stuff. The traditional educational approach has been like a drip system of knowledge that goes into a student who can later spew out answers on a standardized test. Like a tsunami, there is an overwhelming amount of information. We need a new game in the 21st century, for being smart is no longer how much you know, but how to navigate what is known. As a result of these two problems, we clearly have an educational crisis, because the rising tide of water is not affecting some of us, but rapidly drowning all of us.
All right. So the little book in the middle, you guys probably weren't looking all hard like that, but there's a book in the middle, and he mentions Dr. Geneva Gay. And she basically was one of the first people to start researching and understanding what is culturally responsive teaching. So the first thing I want us to think about doing is thinking about, what does it mean to be smart? What does it mean to be smart? No, the PowerPoint. Yep. Skip all that. All right. So I want to share this. I think it's important. I want us to be thinking about, what does it mean to be smart? I've lost 9 children. 9 of them no longer exist on this earth anymore. And 7 of them were in college. So I want us to think about, when we think about what it means to be smart, is it going off to college? Is that the end goal? Is that what we really want for students? Or do we want something greater? And I think we have an even greater call as a people to want something greater for our children and for our own sustainability as well. Culturally responsive teaching. I have a lot of teachers who graduate students and then they actually don't know whether or not they're going to be okay or not. So like, I don't know when they graduate if they're like gonna go to school, if they're gonna be able to make it through school. So culturally responsive teaching tries to actually tackle some of that before your students actually leave out of your classroom. I would also say culturally responsive teaching, you'll see a picture here of Katrina, who's not here, but she's holding the young man's arms open like this, and what she's doing is she's responding to youth culture. So when we hear culture, sometimes we think about race or where you're from. Although home culture is important, I think the thing that's ignored the most in education is actually youth culture. How do youth learn? So everything that I need to know is at my fingertips, but I'm keep getting packets. And at the bottom here, you'll see a group of 4 students, and they're in New Orleans at a school that was called Landry. And they had a social justice fair in which they invited everyone from their community, all of their aunts, people who are in the mayor's office. Like, they were down with presenting why blood diamonds shouldn't exist, how the children who are the ones who are doing all of this blood diamond stuff, how they're very, very similar to children in New Orleans. They wanted to talk about gang violence. They wanted to talk about gun violence. They put forth solutions for their community. And that's moving children toward activism. So there's a difference between responding to your students, which means that, hey, I understand that you guys are, maybe in a low-income community. Let's read this article. That's you being responsive. Critical education then says, hey, we're going to take it a step further. Now that we've responded, we're going to think about the whys of this. Why do we have so much violence in our community? What's happening here? Critical education is constantly asking the question why. And then taking it a step further is actually student activism. And a lot of us didn't get student activism into college, which is a shame. Because we have to think about whether all of our students, and not even just all of our students, to be honest, whether American students are actually going to college. So if I never go to college, I may not actually be thinking about solutions for my community. Does that make sense? So I'm going to play a clip from my former student. But before I do that, you guys have on your page, I think it's from Grace Chin. Do you see that? It says Grace Chin story. Do we see that? So I want you to take 30 seconds and read it. This is her story about her students when they went off to college and what they faced. And then I'm going to play a clip from my student, my former student.
It's Motley. I'm currently a junior at Loyola.
Okay, so Jamie's going to press play on the video. But before she does that, there's a quote here. How many of us have read The Invisible Man? I love that book. Right? Isn't that classic? So he says something I think about all the time. I am invisible, understand, simply because people refuse to see me. When they approach me, they only see my surroundings, themselves, or figments of their imagination. Indeed, anything and everything but me. And I think about this a lot in regards to our children and ourselves. We carry that weight. I think it's an extra weight, to be honest, when we feel that way about children. And so this is just a space where we can just have down talk, real talk. There's something within our org specifically, and this is totally rogue, but there's something in our org specifically that we don't address, and I actually think it's classism. My mentor, Miss Lori, who if you ever come to New Orleans, you should meet, she said to me when I first hit the scene, I don't hire black TFAs. And I felt some type of way. I was like, what you mean? That's me. And she said, because the TFA people that I've had who have been of color, they are incredibly elitist. And to be a black elitist is worse than being a racist. At least if you're a racist, I assumed it, and I was correct. She's a genius. But she said to me, if you're an elitist, your children see you, our community see you, and they don't assume you'll be that way. And you stick up your nose, and you roll your eyes, and you sucked your teeth and said, of course your mama didn't come. All of those things, right? And so I think sometimes we can read this and just be like, yeah, them white folk, they need to hear that. I am invisible because you don't see me, right? But I actually think that this is relevant for us as well in dealing with each other and our students. And to be honest, it's one of the biggest gaps that I see with my core members of color. All right, sorry, that was my little rant. Back to the scheduled programming. We're going to play a little snippet from one of my students, Kenneth Motley. He's hilarious. I love him. He's president of his Black Student Union. He's a cheerleader. Kenneth. He's a cheerleader. He runs some fashion thing in which they have a fashion show every every semester that he makes me come to, and I'm like, what are you dressed in? You have on tights. But I love him, and he's doing incredibly well at Loyola, and I don't know where Loyola University falls, but I think it's like a tier 2, tier 3. It's a pretty good school, actually. And so he's there, and we were talking about our African American literature class / American literature class. So I wrote a curriculum for African American literature that I taught to them first, and that I had to fight really, really hard in order for my charter school to actually put forth. So if you have ideas that you want to put forth on your school, put them on paper and push it through, because it's important. And then I had to flip it and teach them American literature. And so as of recently, I've been having conversations with them, and they're all in college now. Everyone from that grade that I taught African American literature, and this is why if you suck at data, you need to get better at it, because you're going to do awesome stuff that you can't prove, and that sucks. It happened to me, real life story. So all of my children from that class graduated and went off to 4-year universities, except one. And he had offers to go, but he wanted to be a tattoo artist. And he's a critical, conscious tattoo artist. He will not give people the fleur-de-lis. And he talks to me about that all the time. He was like, that slave symbol, I remember that, and I ain't giving it to nobody. He's like, you know how much paper I miss out on? I'm like, I'm sure you do. You in New Orleans. The people think that's the saint symbol. You probably miss out on mad paper. But he's like, he will not do it, and I respect it. I love it. Children should be able to choose what they want to do with their lives. And he didn't choose to be a tattoo artist because he couldn't go to school, because he had almost a full ride to Xavier. He chose to be a tattoo artist because that's what that man wanted to do. And that's important, but that's a whole nother rant. I'm going to keep it moving. So let's play Kenneth. What I want you guys to do as you're listening to him, there's a 4-pronged definition on the front paper. We see it? 4-pronged definition. So we had a conversation about what I'm doing now in life, and he was like, I feel inspired. You're going to hear him, this is real. He was like, I feel inspired to talk about this. I have iTunes. And I was like, okay. And I was like, go ahead and record it for me, man. I'll share it with people wherever I go. And so he did that, and I think his words are actually really powerful. And when I was teaching, I was a culturally responsive teacher and didn't know it. So a lot of you guys may be sitting in the room, and you may be like, man, this is exactly how I teach. It's not something that necessarily has to be taught, but it is something that if you already have it, it needs to be developed and coached. Okay? Nothing's perfect. It needs to be molded. If you don't have it, that's cool. You can get it. That's all. Play Kenneth.
Hi, my name is Kenneth Motley. I'm currently a junior at Loyola University, New Orleans, studying mass communications with a concentration in public relations.
Be looking at the 4 prongs, thinking about what he says.
I value the education I received at my high school. Yes, it was inner city. Yes, it got crazy sometimes, but there was a beacon of hope every day, knowing that I was going to go to Miss Rogers' African American literature class. And it isn't because all of the other classes I took were so horrible. That class taught me something about myself that no other class could have ever offered me. And I know it may sound like I'm being extremely dramatic, but I assure you that I am not. The classroom was warm. It was inviting. The classroom was adorned with African American art, African political figures. So not only was the class enjoyable, but the scenery of the classroom made it much more pleasurable, because you saw images of profound African Americans who were once young just like you, or it set you up to believe that this was your future. You were going to be one of these people. You were going to be great. You felt greatness. All of this happened just by stepping into the room. This has nothing to do with the curriculum. I'm a junior in college now, um, and I can't remember if I took the class my sophomore year in high school or my junior year in high school. It was a long time ago, but what I can tell you is that the experience I will always remember. I have a friend that I took the class with who's still my friend today, and we reflect all the time. And we always talk about how that class changed us. It forever changed who we were, it shaped who we wanted to be, it changed who we are today. I didn't really know who I was as an African American man or boy then. Um, I didn't know much about race relations. I didn't know much about African American identity, African American history itself. I was lost. I was confused. I didn't know anything. And this class was definitely a catalyst. It forced me to want to know more. And I had an amazing teacher. She was just as relatable as a sister or a friend, yet she was still an authoritarian figure. She challenged you all the time. It was challenges every day. I recall this time when I was, of course, afraid of public speaking, but she told us to create our own poems, and we were going to present them in front of the class, and I was terribly nervous. And she told us to make the poems really personal, which I did. It was about my sexuality, and it was something that I've never really expressed. And just being able to express myself in a way that I wasn't going to be able to if I didn't have that class, that's groundbreaking itself. We fell in love with history. Every day, I swear, it was a new era we were discussing, and we learned our history through literature, and of course through other forms of media, like some relevant films or music. She taught us definitely the importance of knowing your history and how ultimately knowing your history affects your identity. So, culturally relevant education is definitely pertinent in inner city, outer city, public, private. It is important for your education to feel like home, or for it to feel comfortable to you, for it to not be foreign, or for it to not be something you don't want to do. Um, the class has definitely shaped me, like I said before. Where would I be if I didn't take that class? How aware would I be is the real question.
All right. So what I want you guys to do is to think about, I'm going to give us like 30 seconds to think about it. You can share with your partner or not. But to think about what were the things that you heard him saying that matched up with the four-pronged definition. I think it's really important. It was really important to me that we had a student voice here, and that we were thinking about their experience, because he's never read this definition before. He was just speaking, right? But I think it's interesting how there are a lot of parallels here. So I want you guys to look it over, just like 30 seconds, and then I'm going to take like one or two people. Girl, what's next in this PowerPoint? This is the struggle. And this is the struggle. That's the final video. CRT. All right. I'm going to take one or two people. I can bring the mic to you. I go. Okay, I'm going to take one or two people and bring the mic to you. Like Oprah style. You get a car. Anybody? To share out what were the similarities that they heard between like what he said and what the four-pronged definition says. Oh.
Village 9.
That's 14.
Yeah, I'm Village 14, but all right, my name is Clintel, and I'm from Milwaukee, and so Curtis, my MTLD. All right, so what I said was a perspective where education responds to the needs, heals the suffering, uncovers the history, and builds the esteem of the community and its most precious members' youth. Because what really resonated with me was when he was talking about how comfortable he felt, and he was able to write that poem to share and express his sexuality. And without that class, that he wouldn't have been able to feel safe or even express himself in that way. And that just said it all for me. So.
One more? Okay. Thank you so much.
So what really hit was the fact that, you know, he said in the definition where it says combats the assimilative tendencies of school, he basically kind of said that all of his other classes to him is just like a jumbled mess of bad classes, really, I guess, is the way he described it. But that specific class was combating that assimilative tendency, and it was very different. And the way that it did that was by affirming the student's culture, you know, the fact that he was black and he saw all these other young people. He saw who he was going to become one day. So the way that combated that is it focused on him, the student. So I think that was very powerful.
Okay, so I want to say this. I'm sure some people are sitting here like, I teach math. Where are my math people? I teach science. Where are my science people? And math and science people kill me. Let me tell you about y'all. People who teach math and science, I can't do none of that. It's 4 + 4 all day, you know? Know what that is? Man, I'm here to tell you we created that. We created math. We created the sciences. I don't want to hear one more math teacher tell me what they can't do, and we created it, and the narrative that is put out there is not that we created that. And if you don't know we created math and science, you got some reading to do. You gonna learn today? All right. CRT, culturally responsive teaching, is a perspective and a way of viewing teaching. It is not a list of strategies or tools, but it will give you ideas for how to create change in your classrooms. And ideas are important. I think people are trying to figure out all the time. People are like, how do I be the perfect CRT teacher? How do I be the perfect CRT teacher? There is no perfect way. There's legitimately no perfect way. People have studied culturally responsive teaching for a very long time now. And all of the teachers actually teach very different. Some of it's regimented and tight. Some of it's not. There are some key principles and dispositions that are the same, and we will go through those. Culturally responsive teaching puts student identity, consciousness, and academic achievement in the forefront. Culturally responsive teacher approaches the curriculum, which is the what, the pedagogy, which is the how, and the relationships, which is the why, in a way that reaffirms the voices of students and community, which is the who. So we're going to look at this first, and then I'm going to go back. So our organization does a lot of things right. That's me being affirming. Our organization is moving to doing some things better. One of those things being not starting with the why do I lead. Most of you guys probably went to the Institute and they were like, you really need to think about your why. Why are you here? I challenge you to think about your who. Who are you here for? Who are the people who are supposed to be leading this work? So students and families must be at the center of our theory of change. And people say to me all the time, Stevie, students and families are at the center. I disagree. You want to know why? Because I believe if students and families were at the center, our communities would actually look a lot different. So I take New Orleans, for example, and I love New Orleans. We've been there for like over 10 years, right? So you would think at this point, all of our students and families would be running the schools. False. That means somebody's not at the center of our theory of change. Somebody, and it's usually us, are getting a lot of gain. We're getting a lot of great things. We're running schools, and those things are important. But I challenge us to think about the fact that when your student graduates, will they be able to run your school if you wanted them to? Will they be the teachers in your school? Because to me, that's real change. And that change begins in the classroom. You begin fostering that in your classroom. Students are forces of change in their own communities. Students must navigate the borderland between the worlds of school and home. And we're going to see a little video about that later. Okay? So this is our conceptual map. This is us rethinking what SMART means. Us rethinking how to teach, starting with our who. So if you are a math teacher or science or social studies or English or life skills, y'all teaching some wild stuff up in here. But whatever you are, you want to be thinking about how I can connect to the who of my students. So doing things like identity poems, all of those things, it goes across content. Across content. I have a sample curricula here, but one, you can't see it. Two, I thought it was going to be printed out, and it wasn't because that was my fail. And then three, you guys are going to get this in your breakout sessions, so I'm going to skip it. The mere imparting of information is not education. So this is your curricular, right? Some of you guys already have a curriculum, and you cannot change it. How many of you guys have like a fixed curriculum? Cool. So you cannot change it. What you want to be thinking about doing is how to insert critical conversation, how to broaden it. You got to teach Columbus, teach it, but tell them children that he was a thief. I'm wilding out. YOLO. All right. And then you want to think about your pedagogy, which is different than your curriculum. Your curriculum is like, what am I teaching? Your pedagogy is, how am I teaching it? So you're teaching children how to think about world leaders. Again, you want to meet youth culture. Y'all know everybody on Instagram. How many Instagram users? On Instagram, straight flexing. Woo! All right. So you want to do things like, if MLK Jr. had an Instagram, which I think is hilarious given all the facts that we know about MLK. With that being said, you want to think about that. What do we know about him? What kind of things would your children be thinking? Y'all mad? I ain't going to talk about Martin Luther King. I love him. I do, actually. Okay. But you want to get children to think outside of the box. You want to connect. Look at Mike. Mike feels some type of way. I'm sorry. You want to connect children's youth. Instead of telling them, how many of y'all pull out those PowerPoints? You're like, here's my PowerPoint about every last country in the world. Copy the notes. Whack. You want to do stuff like take boxes and put the countries on the outside of them. Put items on the inside that represent those countries. Let students learn to be constructivist learners. Give it to them and have them figure it out. Stop giving kids these little graphic organizers. That's whack. That's, again, a dripping system, a banking system of education, as opposed to you rethinking what education can look like. I hear teachers all the time, and they do like voting rights and that type of thing, and they put up a PowerPoint, and they're like, yeah, man, we couldn't vote. And that was tough. It was whack, but now we can, so y'all should. They can, they did, so we could, right? That's cool, man. How about giving your kids the actual test, because that joint exists. Here is the state of Louisiana or the state of whatever, voting test that you had to pass. Y'all got 10 minutes to take it. And they ain't going to be able to pass it because it was that BS, right? But that's the difference between treating your students as constructivist learners and treating them in a banking system where you feel like you got all the information and I just throw it at you. There's more knowledge in your classroom than in your own mind. I can bet that. So how does this work? Here are the teacher dispositions. We're going to go through them. But your teacher dispositions influence your teacher actions, your curriculum, which we talked about, your pedagogy, and your student, parent, teacher, community interaction. And those teacher actions influence student actions, which is academic proficiency. This does not say students don't need to learn how to read and write. That's important. We need to learn how to read and write, okay? But your academic identity that you build within that is critical. There is research upon research that when you connect racial identity, half of y'all are probably in the room because of this. When you connect the greatness of racial identity or where you come from with your academic content, it makes children believe, and that they can do anything. Teachers who do culturally responsive teaching time and time again, people come into the classroom, they're like, we're not seeing the test talk, we're not seeing that, but they beast test. If you're in Atlanta, find Darnell Fine. Beasting. Y'all gonna see his video soon. He's a beast. I'm trying to stalk him down. Cultural identity. Cultural identity is important. Culture means so many different things again. Home culture, race, youth culture, all of those things matter. You digging into your students to find out, we call one more person just Latino, and now find out where you from, what you speak, what are your traditions. Bring them into your classroom. That matters. Cultural affirmation. We're going to talk about that and what that looks like. Again, this is sometimes a struggle for people of color, which I think is interesting. Academic achievement, cultural competence, and critical consciousness are what you get as the student outcomes. So that means students are like, yep, I can read, I can write, I know all of those things. Cultural competence means I can go anywhere and engage with anybody at any time. Critical consciousness means that I'm looking at the world and I'm asking why. So for those who are like, man, I still don't understand what that means. It's like when we talk about like conscious rappers. Think about them. You're like, man, Common, I always want to get on a track. Why don't you just link with 2 Chainz? No link with 2 Chainz. He's a critical rapper. He's a conscious rapper. He's constantly thinking about why. Why is the world like this and how can I make it better? I'm going to skip that. Well, I can talk about it and then I'm going to skip it. So what this would look like, I'm not going to play it. What this would look like is that as a teacher, I had to teach the interesting narrative of the life of Gustavus Vasa. Have y'all read The African? The African is off the chain. If you haven't, pick that thing up, right? But we had to read the interesting narrative of the life of Gustavus Vasa. It's required reading for 11th grade. If you ain't reading in 11th grade and you're a reading teacher, I'm going to need y'all to do better, okay? So what we paired this with and what we talked about was whether America is a safe space. Whether America is a safe space, and we compared it to Sean Bell. Does anybody know Sean Bell? Somebody just shout it out for me. Who is he? Good. Killed in Queens the night before he was supposed to get married. Unarmed and shot over and over again. We hear this story all the time, right? But how many of us bring it into our classroom to our students so they can actually combat it? Right? So here's the deal. I had to teach Gustavus Vasa. I want to talk about, is America a safe space? I also want to make it relevant to them. Now, I'm not saying making things relevant is always a rap or a spoken word, because I think sometimes people are like, yeah, I'm going to make it relevant. Here's a little spoken word. Ma'am, sir, here are all the seats. But what I will say is that spoken word in many ways is relevant, right? And this is actually a particular powerful piece. I'm not going to play it because of time, but I want you guys to write down in your notes section or whatever. If you have not seen this, it's an amazing piece. It's Brave New Voices. And all of them are like 16, 17 years old, and they were around the age of my children. And it was important to me that they saw children who were thinking about the world critically, but then also said, I'm going to put a voice to that and do something about it, right? Tremendous piece. And we basically compared and contrast all of these. I didn't change my standards, right? I just fit my children's lives inside of the curriculum. Everyone can do that. Everyone can do that. I'm going to go back here because I skipped it. The spoken word thing made me think about it. A culturally responsive curriculum. It is not anti-racist teaching. It is not diversity and inclusiveness. It is not multicultural education. It is not using students' names and word problems. Y'all be out here crazy. It is not using rap songs as the text. Now, if you want to take the Canterbury Tales and turn that into a rap, that's cool, right? But you just being like, yeah, I'm going to play the video and then y'all going to make a little rap. Nah, man, it's not going to work out. What it is, academic standards don't change. The way you teach them does. You use standards and curriculum to insert critical dialogue, like thinking about, is America a safe space for people of color? Utilizing students in their lives to teach meaningful content. Meaningful content. Nothing should be neutral in your space. And what that means is that everything you have up in your room, it should mean something. Every time you hit the center of your classroom, it should mean something. Whatever's coming out your mouth should be meaningful to their lives. If it's not, it's not going to work out. So here are the fundamental beliefs or dispositions. I'll allow you to read them without me reading over them. You can't see them? My bad, y'all. All right. Social cultural consciousness. Affirming attitude towards cultural difference. You guys have this on your page, too, by the way. If you turn to the back where it says Darnell Fine, you guys have, like, the title at the top. You see it? Where it's, like, social cultural consciousness, and then it has the definition, what it is, and right next to it, it has what it ain't. Constructivist approach to teaching and learning. Understanding student prior knowledge and experience. Building instruction off of student prior knowledge. And feeling capacity and responsibility to be responsive. So affirming students' cultural identities is key in developing their academic identity. And historically, this has been very troublesome because they struggle to reconcile who they are at home with who they are at school. You guys in here, some of you may have actually had that struggle as well, which is why we do stuff like code switch and all that kind of stuff. It's like who I am at home. Might not be able to be this person in this space. We want to try to eliminate that. We want to teach children how to transform spaces and not transport from them. There's a difference. Social cultural consciousness, you understand that there are multiple perspectives in the world. Multiple perspectives. So again, back to the classism point, this is where I see a lot of core members of color struggle, to be honest. And I had these struggles as well. Because although I may relate to the fact that you are a black student and I'm a black teacher, I may not relate to the fact that you're not middle class. So when you do certain things, I may look down upon that as opposed to actually trying to figure out who you are. Affirming attitude towards difference. So teachers who see their students in affirming light acknowledge the existence and validity of a plurality of ways of thinking, talking, behaving, and learning. You are adding to and not fixing. So for any of my New Orleans people, how do children tell you that they're going to the grocery store? Going to make groceries. Well, children roll about, I can't do that at 7 o'clock. I'm going to make groceries. And you're like, all right, right? I teach you all the time, like, don't tell the children, like, make groceries is not what you're trying to say. That's not what you're trying to say is you're going to the grocery store, right? So that's not a CRT disposition. You may be that cat. Have some reflection, okay? It's not a CRT disposition. It's just not. So what you want to do is add to. So, yeah, okay, cool. You guys say make groceries here. I like that. Where I'm from, we say going to the grocery store. Now you got two things to use. You can choose them when you want. That's your weapon. It's a difference. Constructivist views of learning, we talked about this. But basically, in regards to like the pedagogy, basically you're treating your children as if they have crazy cultural knowledge. Every child who comes to your classroom has cultural knowledge. Whether they're 5 years old, they've been on the earth for 5 years. They're 18, they've been on earth for 18 years. So when they come to you, they have all of this community and cultural knowledge that you have to tap into. Now, I would argue that a lot of teachers don't do it because they don't want to make the time for it. They're like, I got these tests. I gotta make sure that my kids are passing this interim, and all those things are really important. But I will argue that you are never, ever going to change children's lives until you tap into who they are. And one of those things is acknowledging that they have cultural knowledge. And if you're not from the place that you're at, they probably have, that you're teaching currently, they probably have more cultural knowledge than you. And they will teach you how to teach them. Commitment and skill to act as agents of change. Teachers are viewing their students and themselves as forces of change in their communities at large. And this is when we get into that student activism piece. How are your students acting, right? Did they, when you gave them the lesson about mass incarceration and you used that math example, right? You gave it to them. Did they then go out and say, hey, man, what we're going to do in class is we're going to put together brochures about what's happening. We're going to print those brochures, and we're going to give them out in our area, because that's student activism. When your students are learning about the civil rights movement, are they then saying, hey, man, we're in the 11th grade. What we're going to do is put together some presentations, and we're going to take them to the feeder school, the middle school feeder school, and we're going to present to those children. Are they doing that? Right? Because that's activism. That's the stuff we did in college. That's the stuff that makes kids want to go to college. Not, man, y'all gonna have to work real hard, and then you go to college. Like, when you talk to children about that, they're like, none of that shit sounds fun at all. I'm not interested. The way we present it, I wouldn't be either. So here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna play a video, 2, and then I'm gonna play Darnell Fine, and then we're gonna wrap up.
Part 2 of 3. How does equity affect education? What's the difference between in-risk students versus at-risk students? Our educational crisis is like a rising tide of water that is not affecting some of us, but rapidly drowning all of us.
White people included.
Traditionally, in crisis, the medical field has a proven response system that helps to identify what needs exist. This system, used by ERs across the world, the Army and the Red Cross, categorizes people based on their needs. These categories are tagged as green, stable, but they still need attention in order to prevent future complications. Or yellow, they need observation and some medical attention. And red, urgent care is needed or the patient will die. We need to transfer this proven approach to education. And to help us understand what this would look like, we're going to follow a group of students, one of which is named Kelly. So as Kelly enters high school, the reality is only 75% will graduate high school. And this is 60% for African Americans and Latinos. The students who do not move forward are what we call in-risk. They'll represent the red category. Of these in-risk students, half of them stated they did not see school as relevant to their lives or that the classes were engaging. Now, of the remaining students, only 35% will be college ready and be eligible to attend a 4-year university. This is only true for 25% of African Americans and Latinos. The students who are not college bound are what we call at risk because they are living in an exposed or potential at-risk environment. These students make up the yellow category. The remaining students who, quote, made it, still have another hurdle to overcome. These students are at risk in the future and make up what we call the green category. The reason that these students are at risk in the future is because only 60% will graduate college within 6 years. What many people don't know is that according to Fortune 500 companies, less than 25% of college graduates are excellently prepared to enter the workforce. So with only 5% of all our students in the educational system excellently prepared for the workforce, basically all of our students are in some form of risk. So no matter what color Kelly is either not engaged, not prepared, or playing the wrong game. So the question becomes, what should we be teaching students?
So I'm going to show you an example of what we should be teaching students. His name is Darnell Fine. Yeah. Who whistled? Y'all off the chain. It was you? No, go back. No. Yep, they're all on the same thing. right here. So you'll pause it for me? This is Darnell Fine, teaches here in Atlanta. And you guys are going to be able to work with awesome educators today who also teach this way, and I'm really excited about it. I'm really excited about you guys being able to dig in your content areas. But essentially, I wanted to play Darnell Fine because I think he thinks about education even in ways that I'm not quite ready for, right? He has completely flipped it. He's going to talk about something called the canon. Do we know what the canon is? No? Curtis, what is it? Yep. Awesome. Thank you, Curtis. So for those who didn't hear Curtis, there are works of literature that essentially everyone says that you should read this, right? Like Shakespeare, or I think Malcolm X is on the list now, which I think everyone should read that. They got that one right. But with that being said, he's really thinking about his classroom in a totally different space. And so I want to play that, and then I'm going to play a very quick video after that. Sorry. And then we're going to close. So what should we be teaching students? And all of the strategies that you see here can be used across content.
My name is Darnell Fine. I teach history and language arts in Atlanta, Georgia.
Atlanta Neighborhood Charter is a coalition of essential schools with a philosophy of student-centered constructivist learning. And what that basically means is we anchor the curriculum in the lived experiences of the students. It operates under a series of common principles. And one of those common principles is less is more, depth over coverage, where we really go in depth with the curriculum and we really go in depth with teaching students how to critically think. You know, my critical education started with my mother, and it wasn't until high school when I moved here that I met a teacher named Miss Aaliyah Aziz. Walk into her room, on the upper right-hand corner of her board, it says, Ms. Aziz be trippin', contraction untrippin'. Under that, it had Africa in big, bold letters, spelt with a K. And I was like, where am I? She was teaching me about sexism. She was teaching me about racism. She was teaching me about classism. And this was the first teacher ever that gave validity to my Black English vernacular. It's important for students to feel like the class is a democratic space where they can have dialogical encounters with each other. They have to be able to share who they are beyond the confines of the classroom. Kids before content. And what that means is like you have to look at individual kids before you look at these concepts and this content, because ultimately you're not trying to dump a whole bunch of facts into students and say, here, learn these. No, you have to get to know who they are first as individuals so we can really personalize the curriculum to fit their needs. And open forum is a way for students to express and bring whatever funds of knowledge that they have, whatever talents that they have, whatever's weighing on them heavily.
I had read one of my poems to my brother and my mom about love. It's not this.
Keep in mind that the canon in humanities is all socially constructed, where someone's picking these texts as being the texts that we study. Why can't students actually bring their own lived experiences in the classroom for us to study? Because that's just as valuable as Ernest Hemingway or William Faulkner or Toni Morrison.
Me and my brother Carson. It was the first time I got to see him again for a month, and we took pictures.
And this is what my teaching philosophy is anchored in. It's anchored in question, question, question. Getting students to think through a series of Socratic questions so they can birth new thoughts and new understandings of the world. Socratic seminar is a way for students to have discussions. So there's an inner circle and there's an outer circle. The inner circle participates in a critical reading of a text. The outer circle is kind of like a panopticon. It's like surveillance, and they're like observing, and they're checking behaviors. And then they're giving feedback to the discussion after the inner circle is finished. But then it's also reciprocal. This dialogical encounter I was talking about with open forum continues in a very academic way where the students are talking and I'm decentralized. They hate when I interrupt the Socratic seminar because it's their discussion, it's their space. Everyone has a chance to speak and it's supposed to be equitable. So it moves from this very individualistic type of activity to this very communal activity where it builds these interpersonal connections and interdependence, where it's about upholding and supporting the group. It teaches them to have these critical dialogues, not just in my class, but beyond the confines of my classroom. Every single student is a teacher to me, and they teach me something new every single day. They're critical readers, they're critical writers, they're critical researchers. They're amazing.
All right, y'all. Huette talking about y'all hot. Harry, you ain't never hear Harriet Tubman complain about being hot. What if Harry was like, I'm too hot, I just can't do it. I'm trying to end it. See how you do me? Why you gotta come over here with all of this? This is behind the scenes stuff. Don't I look not professional? Sorry, y'all. All right. I just want to end this with you guys silently reflecting, you know what I mean? On what's being said here. On the blue side, on the green side, you're going to see what Tal says. And on the orange side, I struggled. You're going to see what different people who are on staff, different alums, different CMs are saying, and they happen to all be statements from people of color. And so, again, I want you guys to think about this like that coin. If we know that our organization currently is moving to a place where it's not dominant-centric, but currently is, but we know that these things are real for our students on the orange side, we want to be thinking about how we can navigate both worlds, and I believe culturally responsive teaching is the way to do that. We read this one? Some of y'all, I'm sorry. You might not be able to read it. I'll email this out to everybody. Why you got it? See, if I read it, the way my mouth is set up, because I'm going to talk about it. Okay. Like the green sides, develop standards, align, measurable, ambitious, and feasible goals that will dramatically increase students' opportunities in life. That's Tal. And so what the orange says is instead of arming and equipping our teachers to help foster students' identity-driven leadership, it feels like we're teaching them, students, how to operate in a white man's world rather than changing it to reflect their identities. So what are the basics? You're going to break out into sessions and learn this. Fitting the curriculum inside of students' lives is the hope. Aiming to address the difference between home and school, bringing in as much things from their home life into school is actually really important. Pictures of their family, all of those things. Push yourself and students to be solution-based. So this is a whole nother step that you guys will, I think, develop and learn over time. But what's going to happen is CRT has its boundaries, which means that you're going to be responsive. And at some point in time, your students are either going to get very angry because they're going to be uncovering certain things, but they're also going to feel angry because they don't know how to actually solve it. Okay, so I'm letting you guys know this is a starting place, but definitely not the end. You want to be thinking about solutions. You want to be thinking about student activism. It's very important. Nobody wants to hear all of y'all are being mass incarcerated and then you're not giving me something to actually go out and do about it, which is important. I think that's why we teach. I think we just sometimes put it off. We're like, you'll do something about it in 4 years or in 10 years. Don't one day them. Give it to them today. This is my last thing. I was going to play this Baldwin video, but I ain't because Huette, may shotgun me. So not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. And so hopefully you guys will take this issue on head on. You guys will think about your curriculums and think about pedagogy. It's also not at times a very easy process to go through, but I believe that it is important that it is faced for our children and for our community as a whole. Thank you.